Speaking of public servants who serve us in elective office, serve us in nonprofit and for-profit, focus on giving back, focus on economic development, and serve us as a member of our military. It brings us to our next speaker, the mayor of Slippery Rock. If you haven't met JD, you should. He's a thoughtful, energetic leader that is not only a leader in his borough, not only a leader in his county, but is leading across the state as the chair of AFPI here in Pennsylvania. Someone who, if you don't know, you should. We're proud that he's on our team and glad that he's here with us this afternoon. Ladies and gentlemen, the mayor of Slippery Rock, the Honorable Jondavid Longo. We know him as JD.
Well, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Let's try again. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. That's a hard act to follow, huh? How about another round of applause for Senator Dave McCormick? It's an honor to be able to join you here today at the Pennsylvania Leadership Conference. And it's an honor to join you at a moment in our nation's history that will, frankly, define the next chapter of American history. And an honor to join you at a time when the theme that I keep coming back to in my mind over and over again reads, Invoking the Spirit of 1776. So in that spirit, I ask you please to travel back in time with me to the summer of 1776. We have 13 colonies, vastly outnumbered, outgunned, facing the might of the British Empire, the world's greatest military superpower up to that point, of course, before we come along. And we dared to declare something radical, that all men are created equal, that they're endowed by their Creator with unalienable rights, life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. You all know them, of course. And you know that they pledge their lives and their fortunes and their sacred honor to this radical idea. Again, that governments derive their powers from the consent of the governed. Right here in Pennsylvania, at Independence Hall in Philadelphia, not far from where we stand now, those words were etched into the annals of time. And when the fighting came, it was right here on our home turf, our soil. At Valley Forge, where George Washington's army endured bitter cold, disease, and despair, and yet emerged forged in the fire of perseverance. Pennsylvania did not just host the revolution, ladies and gentlemen. Pennsylvania embodied it. Yet the war was far from won at that time in history. By 1777, the cause of liberty and freedom hung by a thread. One whisper in the wrong direction, and it very well may have fallen apart. The British marched from Canada south with a superior force, aiming to cut us off into two pieces along the Hudson River, and defeat seemed inevitable. And then came the Battle of Saratoga. In September and October of 1777, American forces under Generals Gates and Arnold, fighting on rugged terrain, vastly outnumbered against a professional army, achieved the impossible. They stopped the Brits dead in their tracks, dead cold. And then on October 17th, the British surrendered an entire army to us. It wasn't merely a battle won, but the turning point of the Revolutionary War. Saratoga lifted patriot morale across the colonies and convinced the French that this ragtag band of misfits, farmers, and tradesmen could prevail. It brought foreign allies, supplies, money, and naval power that ultimately secured victory with us at Yorktown. Ultimately, Saratoga proved that when Americans lead from the front, fight with principle, and refuse to surrender their God-given rights, that the tide can turn even against the longest of odds. Why am I talking about this with you? Well, my friends, right now, right here, I believe truly that we are living in our very own Saratoga moment. And I believe it started on July 13th, 2024, in a place called Butler, Pennsylvania. See, for years, the left has advanced policies that have weakened our sovereignty, burdened our families, and eroded the very principles upon which America was founded and that made America the greatest nation in the history of mankind. We have skyrocketing energy costs because of those policies, regulatory strangulation of our businesses, failing schools that fail to prioritize our students and reward ideology over excellence, and streets that feel less safe because of these policies. These are not accidents of history, though. They are the predictable results of placing government power above individual liberty. Yet today, we can say confidently that the momentum has shifted. It is shifting. See, the America First agenda that delivered energy independence, record low unemployment, criminal justice reform that actually worked, and a renewed respect for our sovereignty, imagine that, is once again proving its effectiveness, not just here at home, but across the globe. But here in Pennsylvania, we are poised to lead that charge, as we rightly should. See, the question before us is not whether the tide can turn. History has already shown us and proven to us that it can turn. The question, however, is whether or not we will summon the courage here and now to lead from the front, to lead by example, and to stick unapologetically to the America First principles that made this nation great in the first place. First, we must lead from the front on economic prosperity. We must remain laser focused on building opportunity by reducing burdensome regulations and taxes that stifle job creation. Pennsylvania's natural resources, our abundant natural gas, our potential for nuclear innovation, our hardworking workforce should power not only our state, but the entire nation and the world. We must reject the policies that punish reliable energy and instead reward ideology that works. We must expand infrastructure, cut red tape, and create the pro-business, pro-worker climate that lifts every family. Because we know when Pennsylvania leads on energy dominance, America wins. We must lead from the front on strengthening our families and our children. Parents, not bureaucrats, we know, as we heard Secretary McMahon and Mary Stifler so eloquently put it, know what's best for our sons and daughters. We must stand for real school choice so every family, regardless of zip code or income, can access the education that prepares their children for the future. And we must, of course, reject indoctrination and return to excellence and patriotism and the belief in American exceptionalism and bring that back to our classrooms, because we know that strong families are the foundation of a strong republic, exactly as the founders understood it. And we must lead from the front on keeping our streets safe. Support for law enforcement and accountability for criminals will restore trust in our institutions. Because communities that feel safe are communities where families thrive and businesses grow. See, public safety is not a partisan issue. It's simply a basic promise of ordered liberty, the promise that our founders set off in 1776 and beyond to see us enjoy. And this, ladies and gentlemen, is how we turn the tide. Not by chasing the latest political fad, but by returning to America First principles. And we've seen what happens when we lead, when Pennsylvania leads by example, haven't we? So many of you right here in this room from small towns and major cities across the Commonwealth, you dedicated leaders and volunteers, you citizens, are showing that public service must be about service and not personal gain, and you are. See, real leadership is measured by what we are willing to sacrifice for the greater good of our communities and our state. These are not just abstract values. They're the American values that Pennsylvania was founded upon, and of course the values upon which our nation was founded as well. And that's what we must keep doing every single day, arming our citizenry with the research, the data, the education, and the policy blueprints to put Pennsylvania on top where it belongs. We're not waiting for permission. We're building the future our children deserve. And so, my fellow Pennsylvanians, the spirit of 1776 is not confined to history books or to this speech. It lives in us right here, right now, and every day. I'll remind you that John Adams told us that liberty once lost is lost forever. Thomas Jefferson declared that our liberty can never be safe but in the hands of the people themselves. George Washington went on to call the preservation of liberty the sacred fire entrusted to the American people. We are the keepers of that fire. So I ask you, please, to let this Pennsylvania Leadership Conference mark the day we recommit ourselves to these ideals and these values. Let us leave here resolved to lead from the front and by example in our communities and in our roles, in our personal lives. Let's recommit to making sure that we're teaching our children the value of hard work and self-reliance, and moral courage, most importantly. And let us never, ever waver from the America First principles of limited government, free enterprise, secure borders, and a strong national defense. Again, I say, this is our Saratoga moment. The dissenters are not invincible. The odds are not insurmountable. Victory does belong and will belong to those of us who refuse to yield. Now, Pennsylvanians, the eyes of history are upon us right now. So let us answer the call of 1776 with that same unyielding spirit that defeated the British at Saratoga. Let us secure liberty for ourselves and our posterity, so that when future generations look at us and look at this year here now, decades from now, they'll look back and they'll say, look at them there in Pennsylvania, in Camp Hill in 2026. Pennsylvania's sons and daughters turn the tide once more, as the founders did at Saratoga, because they followed the founders, because they invoked the spirit of 1776, and they chose to lead without apology and from the front and by example. So thank you all very much for allowing me to make this call to action to you. It's been a pleasure. May God bless you very much. Thank you.